Welcome to the epicenter of sports and entertainment. This is The Rude Dog Show. Now, here's your host, Rudy Reyes.
Gotta love that intro. Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Rudy Reyes on The Rude Dog Show. I've been gone for a little bit. Sometimes you have to rewind, reflect, and kind of redo things. And not that the production of the show has been any different, not as if I am trying to recreate the wheel. I just need to give it a little bit of grease and rest and relaxation. I was in Vegas for the last few days, and needless to say, it was relaxing. A little hot, of course, as you would expect, but it was hot nonetheless. I am live right now on the Rude Dog Show. Live on Twitter, live on Today's California. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be your viewing pleasure tonight. Live on Twitter, LinkedIn, out of all new places. I know people are really starting to move that direction to get people to come out of their business attire and rip it off and turn into Superwoman or Superman. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Everybody has had the opportunity, except for me. And I went on a little tirade earlier today talking about how the NFL Plus app is not quite working for me, and it isn't. And it still isn't. I still can't get to news and video analysis, things of that nature, things I normally would dive into if something actually worked. But there's always ways around that. And with that being said, we've seen the NFL Preseason 2022 finally come to a deciding close. And I don't mean deciding as if it's going to decide who's going to the Super Bowl, who's not going to the Super Bowl. But what it does is it gives coaches, position player coaches, head coaches, strength and conditioning. It allows to give all these guys who are fighting for a roster spot to get into an NFL franchise. They have the capabilities. It's making the mistakes, making the issues. Of course, if you're a high-end draft pick, you're likely locked in, if not locked in prior to even getting into training camp for your respective team, regardless of where you're at. And needless to say, it was great for some teams, and it wasn't great for other teams. Man, look at the love I got going on here. Bill Senso saying hello. Well, hello back. Glauber Montalvo Vidari. I think I hacked that. My apologies for that. I'm probably better off not bothering trying to dissect that. Yes, thank you, Maria. It's great to be back as well. Thank you so much. And good morning, Mr. Josh Murillo. I appreciate it. Of course, Mike Epline. Hey, Mike from New York. Of course, I know that familiar name. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate all of you, and I thank you for the love. And of course, you guys will get a little bit more love as the show goes on. The more comments, the more interjection, and the commentary certainly goes a long way, especially with show vibrancy and keeping things fresh and clean and new, right? So fresh is so clean. You've heard that before, I'm sure. And of course, from Peru. All right. Well, there we go. Nice to meet you as well. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Rudy Reyes, live on Today's California and live on TheRudeDogShow.com. This show will be posted on TheRudeDogShow.com, and normally you would see a Rude Dog Show logo behind me, and it's just not one of those days where things are coming together as I would like them. But needless to say, it's been great to kind of step away and reflect. But here I am. And post preseason conversation starting in the NFL. We're not going to get to the 49er news quite yet, but we're certainly going to segue and get to that point. Thank you, Della. Thank you very much from LinkedIn, out of all places, my first LinkedIn. So thank you for that one. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in here for about 30 minutes for everybody's viewing pleasure. And of course, if you like the NFL, feel free to join in. Yes, David, of course, you're always welcome on the show. You know that. Just send me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So thank you for that. Certainly all the love. It feels good heading into a birthday week. Oh, did I say birthday week? My bad. You'll figure that out as time goes on. As every show goes on. I will not have a show on my birthday, just FYI, and I will not have one on Friday. So I'll let you know that up front. But thank you very much. I appreciate it nonetheless. So we've seen a lot of great things in the NFL and a lot of good things and maybe not so many good things. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm here for, again, your viewing and audio pleasure, to say the least. So thanks for tuning in. I certainly appreciate it greatly. We've seen the Dallas Cowboys struggle in various ways. I know Jerry Jones, in his infinite wisdom, of course, he wants to be the smartest guy on the planet. And for all intents and purposes, he can be that guy. He has a propensity to be that guy. He just has recently had redone Dak Prescott's contract, had given the opportunity to other guys in the organization to step up their game, but didn't go after any type of offensive help in regards to protecting Dak Prescott. And that's kind of sad. I mean, this is something that you know about Jerry Jones. It's not as if this is anything new to those that know how Jerry Jones drafts, as well as what he does in the cuts aspect of it, which is actually forthcoming for all 32 NFL teams. So a lot of things to like if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan. I didn't see a whole lot of fantastic things from them. But again, this is preseason, so nobody should be overhyped in regards to what that really looks like, what that should look like. And overall, when I look at the Cowboys and when I look at the Giants are kind of a surprise to me, to be quite honest with you. They haven't looked very good recently. Saquon Barkley hasn't been the healthiest. Danny Dimes, if you will, has been more like dropping half pennies. Maybe he's gone to Vegas a little too much. I don't know, but he seems to have lost his mojo. But we've seen him in a few preseason staffs. You'll see all starters get those few preseason staffs. Steelers did yesterday, which didn't actually bode very well with TJ Watt, the minor knee injury. But needless to say, you have to start these guys, at least in some manner, play a little bit, and then get them out. Just get them acclimated and get them out. And with that being said, New York Giants certainly look very different. Brian Daboll taking over as head coach coming out of Buffalo. So headed from one part of New York to the other. So hopefully this is a turnaround for the New York Giants. I'm not going to give predictions as to who's going to go, to the playoffs. And I'm just not into that hyperbole. I'm just not going to bite into it, at least at this juncture. Wait till the regular season, then we could actually have that conversation. But the Philadelphia Eagles, that's kind of where I thought they would end up being at 1-2. There were some things that I did like from Tua, things I didn't like from Jalen Hurts, or things I did like from him. He's matured a little bit, not a whole lot. But I think the Eagles are certainly be in the running in the NFC in regards to where their play calling is, especially on third down. This is Sirianni's opportunity to really showcase what he can do to ownership, as well as being able to turn this ship around since Doug Peterson has left a few years removed from that post. And then the Washington Commanders, known as the Washington football team before that, the Washington Redskins. I don't know if they'll actually know what their team's name really is until the regular season and who's supporting them, who's not supporting them. That was a big offseason debacle in regards to what that situation looks like with Dan Snyder and ownership. And it's a big, big, ugly mess in Washington with the Commanders, and they go 0-3 in preseason. I didn't really like their play selection. Offensive play calls weren't extremely dynamic. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more splash, leave the starters in a little bit more. Carson Wentz is, who he is, who he has been, who he continues to be. Nothing really surprising about Carson Wentz. Nothing surprising about the Washington Commanders, at least at this juncture. But again, it's preseason, so I'm not going to jump into the nonsense and say this team's going to go to the Super Bowl or playoffs, or he's going to have a stellar year, he's going to make a comeback, maybe a comeback player of the year. I'm not going to even have that conversation. I'm not going to even entertain that conversation at this point. But more importantly, I think you're going to see a tighter NFC North than you have in years past, and here's why. Justin Fields has made a lot of great adjustments. You have a new coaching regime. You have a new identity. What are they going to do with Roquan Smith? I'm wondering if they're going to re-sign him, give him a better contract. He deserves it. He's played his heart out. He's shown them that he can. He showed them time and time again. They keep brushing him off. At least that's how he feels. And whether or not the Chicago Bears can actually make a run at the Green Bay Packers, that remains to be seen, because we know Aaron Rodgers, I believe, is 4-0 in postseason against the Chicago Bears, and seems to own them quite a bit more than they actually should. But at the same token, I didn't like the whole offseason Aaron Rodgers situation. I don't think anybody did, to be quite honest with you. And I think more importantly, Aaron Rodgers no longer cutting his hair. Is he that guy? Is he not going to be that guy? Is he going to be Mr. Holistic? Is he going to take a shower? I mean, we've seen so many different sides of Aaron Rodgers, but there's one side that I'm probably more concerned with than anything else, and that's winning. And that's going into postseason and not being 0-4 at home during postseason. That's certainly something that's going to haunt him. Yes, he has a ring, but how many years has that been removed since taking out the Steelers? I mean, let's kind of step it up a notch, shall we? Aaron Rodgers, let's just figure out who we have and who we don't have, and that's Devontae Adams, who travels down to Las Vegas, where I was yesterday and the weekend, pairing up with his old college buddy in Derek Carr. So we're going to find out what that actually looks like this season. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But I'm not laughing at the Minnesota Vikings. I'm actually laughing at the fact that they believe that Kirk Cousins is the answer under center in Minnesota. That's what I'm laughing about, because that contract is hideous. He's making all that guaranteed money up front. We know who he is. We know where he's been. His play style, his play calling, he wears probably too many pads than he should. That's interfering with his throwing motion. Yeah, he's great on third down, but where's he been postseason? Not all that great. And I've never been a big fan of Kirk Cousins, regardless of what uniform he's in. He's still the same player. He'll always be the same player. And that's the bottom line. So if you're in Minnesota, you need to be looking at this Jimmy G situation really closely moving into 2023. We're not going to touch that one yet, but we will momentarily, because I want to get through the NFC and go on to the AFC. You look at the South Division in the NFC, this is probably more competitive than I originally had given credit for, and here's why. Carolina Panthers bringing in Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, slight injury has been kind of keeping him out of the fold. Baker Mayfield named the guy, and of course Greg has to chime in, Raider Nation. Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that in just a minute. I want to talk about the NFC first. We're going to talk about the Raiders. So just hold on to that one. But thanks, Greg, for chiming in, man. I appreciate you. Thank you. Yes, all about Raider Nation for you. Thank you. All right, so I like Carolina. I like them really good in this NFC South. Will they win the NFC South? Probably not. Why? Because they're looking at a big brother. And when I mean big brother, I mean big brother in Tom Brady, who's just rated number 1 in the NFL's top 100. I don't believe he deserves that spot. There are other players who deserve that spot. And one of those guys being Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford. I'm thinking of some 70s sitcom. But Matthew Stafford is a guy who has more than earned it coming over from Detroit, having all those losing seasons, 14 losing seasons in Detroit, comes over to Los Angeles, plays for the Rams, wins in his first year, and wow, unbelievable. Wins the Super Bowl in their hometown, really. And yeah, Jeff Freeze, we're going to get to that. Or Steve, I got you, man. I got you. So they're going to keep him for a year. We're going to get to that in a bit. Yeah, and it was. And we're going to dive into that even more so. But look, I think the New Orleans Saints are on the outside looking in the playoff picture, at least for now. Atlanta Falcons look like they're in pretty decent hands with Marcus Mariota under center. I like Marcus Mariota. I don't know if he's the ultimate answer for the Atlanta Falcons, but he's the answer right now. So they're going to roll with him and find out what that actually looks like. Carolina, I think Carolina's going to do a lot better than people believe that they can. I believe they're going to be a little bit higher than 500. And postseason, again, I'm not going to even go there, but one of those things that, you have a supporting cast. You're right. Supporting cast go big in the NFL on both sides of the ball. So you're absolutely right on that point. And then we're going to get into the NFC West. NFC West seems to be, it's kind of a hodgepodge between Geno Smith starting in Seattle, which I don't know in Pete Carroll's infinite wisdom if that was the right move. That remains to be seen, only because we know who Geno Smith is. Now, for all that's good and wonderful, I think Geno Smith is a guy who has a propensity of getting better. He can get better. Will he get better? That's the best question. That's the bigger question that I'm posing Geno Smith. I'm posing the offensive line as well. They did get some help. They drafted Cross in the first round talent, first round guy is going to do a lot of great things. And no, you're right, Dan. You're absolutely right. The Lions need to change ownership or leave the state of Michigan in order to be the team that they need to be and win those games. Again, I don't know if Jared Goff is a guy, but he did lead the Rams into deep playoff contention. And they're very mediocre. They have been, the Lions, for so long. And I too feel sorry for the fans, but until they leave Michigan and find somewhere else to actually play, I foresee them not being the team that they should be, that fans expect for them to be. So we're gonna get into that as the NFL season approaches. We're gonna have a lot of great conversation, a lot of great feedback. Love the love from everybody live on Today's California, live on Twitter, live on LinkedIn, Facebook. Gosh, you name it, we're everywhere. We are in the metaverse, ladies and gentlemen. So buckle up and sit down, and we're not done with this ride quite yet. We'll go around the mulberry bush a couple times before it's all said and done. Yes, it's Barry Sanders, and probably not even before then of Barry Sanders. And you know what? Russell Wilson may fall flat on his face, and it's going to be a struggle for him recognizing the offense and who his playmakers are and building that chemistry. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. I don't think anybody really wants to talk about how big chemistry is. Tom Brady missed multiple weeks of training camp, but he is the GOAT. So you give him a free pass, or do you? Should you? Do you want to? I don't. I don't at all. The guy comes in out of Michigan, scrawny as heck. Training camp was okay. His draft photos, not very good. And more importantly, he wears all that on his shoulder. So he consistently plays into his 40s, just still dominating. But being ranked number one overall in the NFL Top 100, I don't think so. I think that's a stretch. So let's kind of move on here. So San Francisco 49ers decided to keep, and I mean keep, at least for a one-year tender, Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, I like the 26 that did not go to Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah, he's an old guy. You're right. Would you say he's an old fart? Maybe. I don't know. I'm 48 and I can't even imagine suiting up and getting stretched out and all that. No, I'm good. That's why I'm behind a mic. So I'm not a fan of getting hit or even chased by linebackers. Anyway, so 49ers decide to keep Jimmy Garoppolo at least for another year while Trey Lance needs the mentoring, but he's had enough time of that. He's had enough time with Jimmy Garoppolo being the guy under center, being the guy in San Francisco. And Jimmy G is who he is. He's an advertised piece. And what team needs a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo? A team that's going to be desperate. Why? Because Jimmy Garoppolo is a guy who shows up when he needs to, but doesn't follow through with where he has to go with the ball, where he must go with the ball. And that's not into the defender's hands. We're talking into the end zone on a consistent basis. We're going to talk about all those stats and dynamics here in a minute. I want to move on to the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona Cardinals decided to dip their hand deeper into the cookie jar to rectify this crybaby quarterback situation, Kyler Murray. Yes, it's like crybaby for a lot of reasons, because he didn't show any maturity in the offseason. He blanked out his social media accounts. He basically said, you know what, I don't want anything identifying me with the Cardinals. I want nothing to do with me and the Cardinals. And okay, wonderful. That's great. But then I'm going to sit out. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to, communicate with the front office. I don't want anything to do with anything Arizona. No cactus, no sand, no hills, no nothing. So then Arizona says, you know what? Let me talk to the guys. Let me talk to the brass. Carolina and the Brownies. I'm going to take Carolina because Jacoby Brissett's not going to take them to the promised land. I can guarantee you that. And a baseball player. No, Carolina doesn't even have a baseball team, at least not yet. And then the Brownies, I don't know. I don't even like brownies for that matter. If you have fudge on them, I guess it's okay. But so we skip Arizona. Arizona could be a middle of the pack team. We don't know yet. But then the LA Rams trying to run it back. Now, I want to talk about this for half a minute because I believe it needs to have some conversation associated with it. Number one, I don't care if the NFL is not involved in analyzing the situation that happened during the Cincinnati Bengals uh, joint practicing. I think that's a huge debacle. It's a problem. And I'm not saying that Aaron Donald is the problem. I'm seeing his actions. You've seen other teams do it. You've seen Myles Garrett do it. Myles Garrett was punished in game against the Steelers. And then during joint practice with Aaron Donald, one of the best players, one of the biggest and brightest stars in the NFL, decide to go ballistic with a helmet with no excuse even remotely possible. And yes, Tucker, you know that's you I'm talking to. So, look, if the NFL is going to stay consistent with punishments, joint practice should also be under that umbrella. Instead, they allowed the LA Rams to take control of this situation, to quash it, and say, you know what, this is not what we're going to do. We're not going to dip our hands in this. We're not going to get ourselves messy. And the Rams said, you know what, bad boy, Aaron Donald, don't do that again. And that was it. That was it. There was nothing more. There was nothing less. How can you allow that to occur? How can you place a double standard in a situation that warrants more punishment than just saying, oh, well, you're a bad boy, Aaron Donald. Maybe you shouldn't do that. Really? You don't find the guy, you find Myles Garrett. So Aaron Donald is better than Garrett? I don't know. The inconsistencies certainly exist, but I appreciate the love. Thank you, everybody. We're going to dive into this Jimmy Garoppolo thing for half a minute, but today's California.com. Go shout out there. Everything having to do with California, along with Coachella Valley, where they're at. I'm live on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. Didn't even mention YouTube, Twitter, you name it. I'm on it. Check it out. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to step up and make yourself known. Let me see what your thoughts are. I want to hear a lot more feedback from you guys in regards to this Aaron Donald situation as we move forward into the AFC, which tends to spend more money historically than the NFC, and most people don't know that or aren't even aware of that, but that's what leads the NFC to win more Lombardis on the long term than in the short term. I'm going to start with the New York Jets, who we've seen losing their starting quarterback in Zach Wilson, I believe is his name, and in turn, he's done, and he's done for the season. Yeah, the fight game. That's exactly right. The fight game. A fight game outside of an actual practice that wasn't even supposed to occur to begin with. That's the problem. That's what I'm referring to. The New York Jets find themselves in plus territory, 3-0. Not bad. They scrapped it out in preseason matchup games. Buffalo Bills certainly looked the part, but ended up being 2-1. Dolphins at 2-1. And all these teams still need to trim down to their 53-man rosters. Bigger question is it seems like the punters are the ones that are getting hurt the most. Have you not seen this? Has this not been a thing? Does anybody want to talk about punters getting injured? Well, of course. They're a vital part of the team. They have to be there. They're a part of the team. You can't do it with no punter. You're going to throw the ball 99 yards? Nobody's ever done that. That's not going to happen anytime soon. So punters galore. If you're a punter and you want to get hired, check out a few NFL teams that will actually need you. And and fired. Someone should be fired. Maybe the coaching staff needs to be fired. Maybe they need to look internally to find out what's going on with the Rams and Aaron Donald. But he needs to be fined, no doubt about it. Miami Dolphins, middle of the pack. They did make some cuts today. New England Patriots at 1-2 with Mac Jones in his second year looked relatively good. Offensive line not overly impressive. They did prevent a lot of would-be massive sacks, and these guys going absolutely nuts over it. Yeah, the Bills kicker is one of them. There's so much emotion, right? Emotion between today and Friday is just going to be an absolute mess because they have to trim that down to 53. So who's going where, when, how, and why? Sony Michel was cut from the Dolphins, formerly on the New England Patriots squad. So we're going to see where he lands. I know there are some teams out there that really need a good running back, Super Bowl winning quarterback. So we'll see. Running back, excuse me. So moving on to the AFC North, my favorite out of favorites in the AFC, and not just because the Steelers are in it, but because this is one of the most knockdown, drag-out divisions we're going to find in the NFL. Between the Baltimore Ravens at 3-0, ending preseason, Steelers at 3-0, Pickett or Trubisky, you know, I tip my hat to Kenny Pickett. He's played absolutely phenomenal ball. I love what he's doing. I love how he's doing it. A guy drafted out of pick, 20th overall, 2022 NFL draft. They basically got Mitch Trubisky for almost nothing over 3 years, $3 million. That's nothing. Steelers will never overpay for a position, guaranteed. But I think when we're looking at pay, we're looking at Lamar Jackson, Baltimore Ravens. That's a very interesting situation because now he's going to try to mitigate what he's going to do with his mom. His mom's still involved in that process of renegotiating his contract. So whether or not he signs one now or during the regular season, I think it's more the regular season for Baltimore to sign Lamar Jackson with some serious money. Because again, the longer he sits, the longer he doesn't get a contract, the more he's going to be worth because he's just that guy. That's just who Lamar Jackson is. And in interviewing him in 2018 in Arlington when he was drafted 32nd overall in the first round, it was by the Ravens. And they've done great things. NFL MVPs, scoring leader. He's done a lot of great things for that franchise. So he's definitely worth the money in that regard. Cleveland Browns, they're just an absolute dumpster fire. I mean that in every sense of the word. Because you get Deshaun Watson in there. So now he goes from a measly 6-game suspension to 11-game suspension, gets fined even more money, additional $5 million. So he's now done up until he faces his old team in the Houston Texans, I think week 11 or week 12. And now there's a situation where it's going to be very awkward for him, awkward for the team. Haslam doesn't make any sense. So he's 26 years old to give him a free pass. No. How many free passes? 25 for every single woman? Are you serious? Are we going to have this conversation? There shouldn't even be a question. Haslam should be fired himself just for that statement alone. But that's another story for another time. I'm not going to get into the minutia on that one. But I don't think the Browns are going to go anywhere. I think the Steelers could trump them as being well over 500. Tomlin hasn't had a 500 season in a very, very long time since Don Shula. In fact, yeah, well, if he likes his bow, hopefully he doesn't sink his own ship. That's all I got to say. Moving over from the Cleveland Browns to Cincinnati Bengals, we know we're in the Super Bowl. They lost in the Super Bowl. They're going to be looking to get back to the Super Bowl. I have them about a 30% chance of making it to the Super Bowl. And this is before they ever get on the field, before they ever touch the lawn in a regular season game, much less a postseason game. So I'm not going to call them to say, yep, they're going to go back to the Super Bowl. Nope, I'm not doing it. But the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be very, very good, but they're not going to be great. And again, only 30% chance of what I'm giving them to get back to the big game. I don't know that that's going to work. I don't know they're even going to make it at that point. And then the AFC South between the Texans, Titans, Colts, and Jaguars. Jaguars ended up at the bottom of the preseason list. They're the only team at 0-4. And, this is an Urban Meyer's situation where, he was there for 1 year, caused lots of problems, lots of issues. Trevor Lawrence, he kicked the punter. There's no team chemistry. It's it's in the toilet. You just got to know how to cut your losses. And I think that's what happened in the offseason. Enough was enough. Con said, I'm done. So releasing him was probably the best thing he could have done, cutting Meyer off with his head. And then Indianapolis at 1-2 with Matt Ryan moving over from Atlanta. Now going to be the starter, the perennial starter for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think it's a great move for Indianapolis, a great move for him to restart his career and to be able to make something out of a 14-year stint with one team in Atlanta. So good for Matt Ryan. I hope it comes through to fruition for him in regards to what type of season he's going to have. So kudos to Matt Ryan. Nothing but great things to say about him. Tennessee Titans, they're 2-1 in preseason. They were doing okay. I don't know that. Look, if you were going to ask me today if Malik Willis was going to be the guy under center, moving Ryan Tannehill over into the backup spot, my answer would probably be yes. Why? Because Ryan Tannehill, again, another Jimmy G, doesn't know how to finish games, not a great situational football guy, doesn't know how to get things done on third down, third and long, second and long. He's just not that guy to get you to the promised land. almost a Marcus Mariota type situation where he was the backup too, because he swapped out during midseason just a couple of years ago, putting Ryan Tannehill in place over Marcus Mariota. But Malik Willis gives you an edge. He has wheels. He can get out of the pocket. He's ran for plenty of yards in preseason. So I like where Tennessee's going. I don't think Ryan Tannehill's going to be there past 2 years. And then you look at the Houston Texans, who are really surprising in a preseason matchup with Davis Mills under center. They decided to stick with the guy, which probably the best thing they could have done was stick with Davis Mills with new chemistry with Lovie Smith coming over. I appreciate Rodolfo. Muchas gracias. Yeah, thank you. And hug and handshake for you too, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you chiming in. So Houston, Texas, very surprising. I think they're going to be surprising in the regular season as well. Then we get to the, of course, one of the favorites this year is the AFC West, because you look at the Las Vegas Raiders now, Devontae Adams, Derek Carr, you have Renfro, you have a plethora of the tools that you need. Of course, Devontae Adams comes over, had played with Derek at Fresno State, put up absolutely fantastic numbers as two Bulldogs possibly could ever do, especially in the WAC. Just fantastic, guys. And they're like the best of friends, at least from what I've seen during the Hall of Fame game. But this is going to be a big year for the Raiders. A decent year for the Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson comes over from Seattle, sends 3 picks. I believe 3 picks, or it could be wrong. Noah Fant, as well as Drew Lock, wasn't very good in a Denver uniform because of the system, perhaps the changing of the guards at the head coaching position, and then Noah Fant being not really an X factor like they believe that he would, but so far has been relatively decent in Seattle. So a lot of things to really mesh out. And again, I don't know that in Pete Carroll's infinite wisdom if Geno Smith was the right move for him, but he named him anyway as a starter. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, see what Geno Smith has, and be able to get himself back up off the turf. Hopefully not more often than he liked. Russell Wilson may end up struggling a little bit. And I foresee that actually happening toward the beginning of the season, maybe not so much toward the middle of the season, because he's going to be able to build the chemistry, build the understanding, build the camaraderie, being able to understand who his targets are, who his strength guys are, who his weak guys are. And I think because Russell Wilson is Super Bowl caliber, just needed an offensive line in Seattle, which he did not get. And I think he's going to have, again, a lot of unique identifiers on that Broncos team, especially on the offensive line, to find out, what he's going to need, make recommendations, as far as guards and tackles are concerned to keep him upright. But don't forget, Russell Wilson can run. Yes, run. So will he have to do a whole lot of that? That remains to be seen. But highly contested AFC West, to say the least. Kansas City Chiefs, you don't put Patrick Mahomes in the number 1 spot because he didn't deserve it. He fell off. He fell off in the AFC playoffs. He just fell off. So keeping him at 1-0, that's just fandom talking. I know people on Twitter want to talk about that, but I just don't put him there. I probably will never put him there. Maybe during the year they won the Super Bowl, perhaps maybe the year leading up to the Super Bowl. Okay, maybe. But at the same token, the Chiefs without the cheetah will be okay. They still have a lot of great weapons. They still have Travis Kelce, but whether or not they'll be able to handle the draw, hand off to a running back, running between the gaps, so the offensive line do their job and keep those gaps open to gain the yards per carry, all that, all the minutia, all that stuff is going to take a little bit of time for the Chiefs to get used to having play calls surrounding not having Cheetah there. So that remains to be seen. And then the Chargers, man, Justin Herbert just keeps lighting it up. I remember last year when I watched them take on the Raiders to get to a playoff berth. And of course, this was a back and forth game, as you would suspect. They play each other 4 times a year. Not a big deal. They know each other very, very well. And at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, the Raiders ended up just winning that game, putting the Steelers in the playoffs, which is okay, I guess. The Steelers really didn't do a whole lot with that playoff positioning. But this was, Ben Roethlisberger was still 2 years removed from being under center for Pittsburgh. So I want to dive into this Jimmy Garoppolo thing, kind of give you the nuts and bolts, at least from my understanding. So, a 1-year restructured contract, 6.5 fully guaranteed, straight up front, which is probably the best thing they could have done because it doesn't count against the cap, as you would expect. A $500,000 roster bonus was just absolutely nuts. And you actually have a really good point there. I don't do fantasy. That is such a tough. Oh man, it's overly competitive. I think it's just way too much pressure on those guys trying to have fantasy shows and who's going to pick who, how, what, and why. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, and even in fantasy, you still have to bet, right? If I was a fantasy guy and a fantasy quarterback, who would I pick? That's gonna be tough. I would say Josh Allen. If I had a pick, I would say Josh Allen, because he's just so consistent, and he plays his heart out on every single play, and he's going to get those touchdowns to Diggs. You're going to see it time and time again. So I would have to pick him up, but that's a really good question. I appreciate it. So Jimmy Garoppolo will be there at least for this year. Whether or not he looks, toward the future, whether or not a team will actually look him up to say, wow, this is a guy that we need. This is a dude. This is a man that's going to be under center for us for at least the 2023-2024 season. It depends really on how well he plays this year. And even in a backup capacity. We've seen him in a backup capacity with Tom Brady under center for the New England Patriots. But the fact that they were able to save money on this deal was a steal, to say the least. It got the attention of 31 other teams in the NFL. Make no mistake about it, because these teams that are in the lower tier want a guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo. They need a guy like a Jimmy Garoppolo. Whether or not Jimmy Garoppolo can play to any overall expectation of, what that team is looking for, that remains to be seen. But $26.9 million was the original set amount of dollars, but it went from 18 to 19. I think that's a killer deal. It's a steal for the 49ers. It's a steal for the organization. It keeps the cap low as well. The problem I have with Jimmy Garoppolo is that his decision-making processes, right? He leads the Niners, 52 games thrown for, over 12,000 yards, most in franchise history, more than Steve Young, more than Joe Montana, and almost 68% completion ratio with nearly 8.5 yards per attempt. So again, one of those things that he's great from a number standpoint, but the turnovers is exactly right. His turnover ratio, 44 interceptions, was like monstrous at the end of 2017, tied for 12th most in the league, and almost 2 touchdowns to interception. He ranks 32nd in the league. So one of those things where no interception is a good interception, no untimely interception is a good interception. Interceptions are not good regardless of who you are or what time in the game you're playing in or where you're playing, or if this is a playoff, if this is a regular season. It doesn't matter. It makes no difference whatsoever, and you can't tell me otherwise. There's just no way to know that. So I think when you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, when you think of who he is as a player, is he backup? Yes, I think he's a quality backup. Is he a great backup? He's a game-managing backup. I'm not saying Jimmy Garoppolo can't lead you to the promised land, but until he rights those wrongs in relation to his checkdowns, where he throws, what he's looking at, when he needs to throw the ball, when he needs to just tuck and run, decision-making processes, that's situational football. That's pure, unadulterated situational football. And unless he can right those wrongs and turn this thing around, teams are going to be really hesitant to pull the trigger. But the ones that will be desperate are the ones that will say, well, we can live with a few turnovers here and there, apple turnover here, cherry turnover there. It's all right. We'll be okay. But then the turnover when the game is on the line is the one that's really going to bask and make you think twice about making that kind of trade. This is Rudy Reyes on California. Today's California, Coachella Valley. I'm live on Facebook, live on YouTube, live on Twitter. live on LinkedIn. I love all the love. I love that you guys are chiming in. I appreciate it. I thank you so much for tuning in. This is fantastic. I wish I had the logo going on in the background, but again, que sera, sera. Anybody remembers that euphemism? That's exactly what that is. But hey, thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate the comments. Keep it going. I got to give a shout out to Greg, Dan. Gosh, you guys are loading me up. Adela, Glauber, Mr. West, Michael, Josh, Maria. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It's been great having the LinkedIn component. It's always a different twist. But thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great night, and thanks for tuning in.